Yo, I just got back from tour and I was so excited to talk about this that I ran to my camera. First off, shout out to everyone who came to my Seattle or my Portland show. It was awesome. Great meeting you guys. More shows coming soon, more music coming soon. But first, I'm back home in New York. I have this whole video essay ready for y'all, edited. You're gonna get that next week because this week I had to talk about this. So, French Montana dropped his album Mac and Cheese 5 on Friday, and people on the internet were buzzing about it. However, despite having some notable features like Kanye twice, West Side Gun, Rick Ross twice, Lil Wayne, Jeremiah, Jid, 41, and Lil Baby, and more, people were only talking about this album for one reason. And that's because French Montana didn't just drop an album. He dropped 6 albums. The regular version, the clean version, the sped up version, the slowed down version, the acapella version, and the instrumental version. 6 different projects. And if you were having trouble finding all of them at the same time, he went ahead and did a version called Mac and Cheese 5, parentheses, versions, close parentheses, that has every single one of those songs on it. Not only that, but he dropped all of the songs individually as singles, including some of the instrumental, sped up, slowed down, and acapella versions too, as their own singles, not in one little thing, as their own ones. I counted a total of 77 French Montana singles that dropped on Friday on Spotify. You might be asking what's wrong with this? I mean, just look at it. It looks insane. It looks crazy. And it's not just the singles or the tracks that you would expect. He dropped a slowed down, sped up, instrumental, and acapella version of the skit. This is insane. Thank you guys for all the support on my channel, by the way. I drop at least one video on music every Tuesday, and if you want to see them early, go to my Instagram, go to HADJI on Instagram, follow me, check out my broadcast channel. Every day, the day before I post a video, I post it in there. So if you're ever yo, how did this guy comment on this video if it just came out today? That's how, because that's a real one right there. He went to my Instagram and he followed me, and he joined my broadcast channel, and he gets all the videos early. It's free. It's easy. I'll see you there. So before I really get into this, I want to lead with some love, because I've been seeing French Montana get torn apart on the internet all weekend. French Montana is a New York legend. He's born in Morocco. He came to the United States at the age of 13 and has become a successful rapper in a language that he didn't even know until he was a teenager. It's a really awesome story. He had a super authentic come up in New York. He spent a lot of the 2000s running this DVD series called Cocaine City, which is where Coke Boys comes from. And he was grinding for a decade before he dropped his major label debut album. And he had a ton of other obstacles going on too, literally getting shot in the head and almost losing his life. He's got a great ear for beats. He was the one who discovered Harry Fraud. Their song Shot Caller lived rent-free in my head growing up in New York in the early 2010s. Not only is the beat amazing, but French's hook is amazing. You will not catch me slandering French Montana's name or acting like he's some kind of dummy. I feel because of that thing he said about Kendrick where he was I have more hits than Kendrick Lamar, people don't take him as seriously. And I just want to say that French Montana is A-okay with me, even if he dropped an 120 track album and I'm gonna make fun of him for it. He's still a legend. He has a career worth analyzing and celebrating. But that is all the analysis and celebration I'm going to do today. Let's go back to the nonsense. Many people's first reaction when they saw this, when they saw 6 albums from French Montana of acapellas, instrumentals, who is asking for acapellas of album cuts that the album just came out? It's kind of crazy, right? Most people looked at that and were this is an empty ploy for streams. And they're probably not wrong, but I do think it's more complicated than that, and we're gonna talk about that in this video. But let's talk about the obvious first. French Montana is not new to playing games to increase his sales. His album Montana, which came out in 2019, had 2 songs on it, Lockjaw with Kodak Black and No Shopping with Drake, that were originally released in 2016. Just to put that into perspective, they came out in the Barack Obama presidency and then were put on an album that came out towards the end of the Donald Trump presidency. You might be why? Well, it's because those singles did very well. I mean, one of them is a Drake feature, the other one, Lockjaw, was a super big song. So when you add those to your album, they count. At least at that time, they would count in the units, so it would make your first week sales look better. Now, probably the craziest thing about this is that French released an album between dropping those singles and dropping the album in 2019. There was a whole other album that he dropped called Jungle Rules, and these singles could have been on that. So they obviously were just put on this, for sales sake. French has demonstrated in other ways that he will put business first to help his music succeed. And what I mean by that is there are some positive ways he's done that and some potentially negative ways he's done that. So famously, he spent $600,000 of his own money to clear the song Unforgettable with Sway Lee after he was in a session with Jeremiah, and he heard Jeremiah play the song, and he was like, I'm buying that. I want it. I'm gonna make it happen. He put his own money into the video and the marketing and clearing the feature with Sway Lee. And that song has almost 2 billion streams, and it made him the first African-born artist to go diamond in the United States, which is kind of crazy to think about. Nobody's knocking a good business decision when it looks like that. I mean, Unforgettable is a classic song. People still play it to this day. And I mean, he went diamond. So when we see something like Unforgettable, we're like, yeah, great idea. But the other side of that, and like, I don't want to accuse him of anything because this could just be the label that he was signed to, at least in the past. But when people have talked about getting their Spotify's hacked and having songs playing when they weren't the ones playing them, French Montana was a name that came up pretty often. So when we see stuff like that, or when we see bloated track lists with no cohesion and songs that were 3 years old that were just thrown on for the sake of sales, you know, we kind of groan. Now you may say, but HADJI, SZA dropped a single on Friday too. And she also dropped the live, acapella, instrumental, and sped up versions with it. Why doesn't she get killed for it? How is that any different? Well, in some ways it's not different, but at least for SZA, like, her page just has one release with Saturn on it. Also, like, the live version is like a little bit different, and I'm sure her fans really wanted to hear that. There's also some precedent in the music industry for dropping more than one song included in a single. It used to be called a maxi single, when you would drop like the 7-inch record that could have like as many as like 4 or 5 songs on it. So it's not like completely foreign. Like, people used to do this when their songs would get played in the club. You know, they would have the instrumental, they would do certain things. You know, sped up music is now a big thing because of TikTok, so people are just adapting to the times. French Montana, though, he messed around and invented the maxi album, bro. And SZA isn't the only artist to do this. Like, Nicki Minaj dropped the acapella for her diss track to Meg Thee Stallion, Bigfoot, when the song came out. Also, DDG, fellow YouTuber and artist, he has like 8 versions of I'm Geekin' that are out. There's like one with Lil Tyler, there's one with Bia and NLE Choppa, there's a sped up version, there's a Nightcore version. I don't know if those are the same thing. I think they might be different. He dropped a lot of versions. So like, this is not just like French Montana's, like, he's not the only person guilty of this. It just looked the craziest when he had this many songs come out at once. And this might just be becoming the common procedure for A-list artists in the industry. So a couple questions you might have are, why? And another question is, how can we make it not look as crazy as it looks right now for French Montana? So to the first question, there are several reasons why, and I think some of them are a little more obvious than others. The clearest reason to everybody is that, you know, streams eventually equal dollars, and putting out more versions of the song can lead to more streams, and then those streams are going to lead to more dollars for the artists. Look, everybody's already getting shortchanged by DSPs, you know, getting paid barely anything for streams, so why not just squeeze them for everything they have? Let's see how it's working out for them. Take a look at SZA's Saturn release. So this is based only on like a day or two of streaming. I'm not sure if it's 2 days or 1 day. It doesn't really matter though. The original Saturn has 7.5 million streams. The live version has 1.5 million. And then there's another 2 million streams combined between the instrumental and the sped up and the acapella. That's an additional like 50% of the streams that the original version of Saturn was getting. So SZA has gotten an extra like, you know, solid buck in her pocket from dropping these. Like, why not, right? It's gonna help SZA or her label. It'll help her recoup in her deal. If she was independent, it would have just put more money in her pocket. There's probably some fans who want the instrumentals. Probably people who want to rap on it. Probably people who want to sample the voice, you know? Like, there's reasons why it's cool to have them out. So let's take a look at the French Montana versions and see how that's going. One thing I found really interesting is that for SZA, the Saturn track and the Saturn instrumental track are like considered different by Spotify, so the amount of plays that they're getting is different. They're not linked to each other in like the Spotify data, but what I noticed with some of the songs on French Montana's project is that the instrumental plays and the regular song plays are all linked together. So they have the exact same amount. And it's not because the exact same amount of people are listening to both, it's because Spotify is considering them to be the same song. But what's weird is that for some of the songs on the album, it's like that. And then for other songs on the album, it's not. So I don't really understand why that is. It seems kind of random. If I had to guess, it's not up to the artist team to decide that. It's Spotify having like some sort of wonky automated system to decide that, and it's just not working 100% of the time. Going through the numbers from all the different songs on the French Montana album, like, would be a data analyst's either dream or nightmare, depending on how much he liked his job. But what if there's something deeper going on here than just trying to milk some extra streams? Hear me out. This is just a hypothesis, but I think this might have something to do with TikTok and the TikTok UMG battle that's currently raging on. For those who are unaware of the TikTok and UMG situation, which like I kind of doubt you would be watching a music commentary YouTuber with like under 2,000 subscribers if you like weren't hip to that already, but hey, if you are, I'm here. UMG has taken all of its artists' music off of TikTok indefinitely while they work out how much they're gonna get paid per song. Now, it's a complicated conflict, and it's one that I haven't covered like on one side because a lot of people have already covered it, and on the other side, like I don't fully understand all the pieces that are moving, and I don't like being wrong. That hasn't stopped me from being wrong on YouTube before, but I'm trying to keep that to a minimum, you know what I mean? So the root of the problem though is that UMG doesn't feel like TikTok pays enough per song in terms of royalties when their artist songs are being used on the platform. Now, this issue gets a lot more complicated when you consider that a lot of the viral sounds on TikTok are not just the original song. They're sped up versions, they're mashups of two different songs just smashed together. They're instrumentals even. If these sounds are being identified as copyrighted content, then they're gonna be generating revenue for UMG. But those systems, like we just saw, can be a little bit wonky. And if you're doing sped up versions and slowed down versions and mashups, like they might not be correctly registering whose song it is when you post it. And that means someone at UMG would have to spend their day combing through TikTok being like, oh, this viral sound, this actually uses our artist Pee Pee Poo Poo's sound, and like that's not right. They just sped up Pee Pee Poo Poo's song, so we need to start taking Pee Pee Poo Poo's money, you know? But if those songs, those sped up versions, instrumentals, mashups, whatever, were uploaded onto DSPs, it could be easier for that system to automatically identify, you know, when a piece of a song is being used. And also, when an artist uploads their song and it goes onto the TikTok platform, like it's there as a sound. Like the user doesn't have to make the sound. It'll just be there for them. So if the artist drops the official slowed down version, then people can just find that sound and use it instead of using a user created sound where the user went in and slowed the song down itself. I mean, in theory, it's a win-win for everybody, right? The user doesn't have to go through the trouble of like pitching a song down or speeding it up or mashing it together or whatever, right? If there was no creative input in that, it was just kind of like, oh, I want this to be faster, right? Like the user doesn't have to do that, and UMG or whoever gets to generate the money that they want. Now, French Montana is not currently releasing through UMG. He's on this like newer label competitor thing called Gamma. Maybe it deserves its own video, but just for this sake, just know he's not a part of UMG right now. So his music is currently available on TikTok. So if I wanted to start a dance trend to skit sped up, I could do it. The world is my oyster.
Dang, what have you been doing, cuz? I haven't seen you in about a decade, man.
And whenever TikTok and UMG finally admit that they're just having a mid-off and they hug and they work it out and they figure it all out, maybe we'll start seeing stuff like this more often. Sped up versions and nightcore versions, it's not unusual to see them get uploaded to DSPs, but it usually happens after they already went viral on TikTok. So maybe we might see artists like preemptively add those songs ahead of time. Does it look a little desperate? Sometimes. I mean, for SZA, I bet somebody was going to speed that up. For French Montana, was somebody going to speed up his skit? I don't know. So perhaps there is a logistical reason that artists are doing this beyond just money. Maybe this is some kind of necessary evil in the eyes of big music. But if this is going to be the future, then I think DSPs need to figure out how to make it look better than it just did for French Montana. I feel bad that he's the example, but it is what it is. So my armchair product manager take is that they should add different tabs for projects based on whether you want the instrumentals or the regular or the clean or the sped up or the slowed down or the acapella. Whatever other versions you can think of. Nightcore, polka remix, chopped and screwed. You know how like if you're on the desktop version of Spotify and you go to an artist page, you can like click between seeing their albums and seeing their singles or EPs. Like you can take that exact same kind of tab and just put it on each individual project page so that you can switch between the clean and the explicit, or switch between the instrumentals and the regular, whatever. You get what I'm talking about. I think that would be much less of an eyesore than like the current abomination on French Montana's page. You might be like, who cares? I mean, that's valid, but like as someone who's like a cusp millennial Gen Z, like I grew up like hardcore organizing my iTunes. So like I do care about stuff like this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to not care about it. Also, having tabs like that would solve another problem that's been driving me crazy, which is like when I go to my recent like new songs tab where I go to see like what came out each day, the clean version and the regular version will both be in there as two separate things, and sometimes I'll save the clean version by accident and I'll be like, no, when I'm like listening to it. It'll really piss me off because I don't want to hear that. Like I'll be on my bike and it won't be convenient for me to switch to the other version. Like, come on, man. It's actually like one of my biggest pet peeves I remember when SZA's Control came out, and I accidentally downloaded the clean version. I didn't realize. I was walking around like Belgium, like Brussels. I was traveling, and I was walking around listening to it, and I got to Doves in the Wind with Kendrick, and like Kendrick says the word like a million times, and it was just like skipping. I thought he was doing some kind of like avant-garde, like stop and start, like Eminem kind of flow. I was like, I don't know. I don't really see the vision on this. It was really weird. I mean, just look at the lyrics and imagine what would happen if they like chop that up. It's really funny. Like in theory, you could see the cover art will have an explicit tag, but like sometimes they make them really small, or they don't put them in the corner. Like they put them in creative places, or they make them look different. Like I'm not always gonna catch that. This doesn't fix the biggest problem here though. Artists having to add extra versions of their songs just to like squeeze more streaming money out. That's some bleak stuff, man. It really underscores how many people see the streaming model as kind of like a failed system. One of the textbook things you see when a system starts falling apart is like people resorting to using it in weird, twisted ways to gain extra money. I mean, obviously like SZA and French Montana are probably set for life. I'm not really talking about them. I'm just talking about if this becomes more of a trend, then you can see how this would be kind of like dystopian. If Spotify paid enough in the first place, it wouldn't be a necessity. These companies aren't even really turning a profit either, which like adds to the mess. You're like, man, like you don't pay me that much, yet you are not turning a profit. Where is it going? Anyway, these are my thoughts on this. Let me know yours below. I know this was a little bit different of a video for me, but I really wanted to talk about this in a timely manner. Let me know if you want to see more stuff like this, like more kind of like off the cuff reaction, less like video essay, like edited stuff. Like I'm down for both. I'm down to give you guys both. Let me know what you want to see. I think we'll be seeing a lot of artists doing releases like this in the future. I can only hope that DSPs will make it look better than it did for French Montana. Like they need to improve that interface for the onslaught of sped ups and instrumentals and remixes that we're going to be getting. I suppose it's a good thing in a lot of ways because it can be really hard to find an instrumental of a song. And finding an acapella can be hard too, and making them digitally is like not super easy, but when you're producing or making remixes, like it's fun to have those things around. And stem splitters are getting better and better every year. Like I was in a session after my tour in LA, and this dude I was with, he pulled out the FL Studio stem splitter and used it, and it takes like 5 seconds, and it cuts the track into just like bass and drums and vocals and, you know, the other stuff, whatever you would call all the other things. It was really impressive, and it only took like 5 seconds. So if people are going to be doing this to instrumentals and doing this to acapellas anyway, might as well just give us the real thing so that we can enjoy them. And at least for the artists, then those are monetizable, I guess. But it's hard to not look at French Montana's page and think like, damn, dude, that was not it. This timeline is kind of bleak. On that note, it's HADJI. Peace. See you next week.